Well, good evening, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. It's a Friday night. It's the 1st of March. And the only thing I could think of, given the activity that's been going on, we've been waiting all winter for this. Now that we're into March, I would have liked it. This would have already happened so that we could start looking forward to some warmer weather. But it is what it is. Oddly enough, if there's potential here for the snow events that occur tonight and again for Sunday in the New York City area, at least, that these could be bigger than anything that fell during the 3 meteorological winter months of December, January, and February. And of course, New York City having a 6.3-inch snowfall back from November 15th. So it would be really unusual if we wind up with all the accumulating snows of at least an inch or more happening outside the 3 months that are usually considered the winter months. But you know what? Sometimes weird things happen, and that's where I think we are at right now. So we've got 2 weather systems to deal with that are front and center tonight. Joe Rayo, my colleague here at Fios One News, where I toil on a daily basis, he will be joining us shortly. I just want to take just a quick minute just to do a little bit of business and just remind all of you that for those of you who are looking for expanded weather coverage every day, not just during storms, but every day, you can check out my platform on Patreon. It's just $2 a month, and it goes a long way to help support everything that I've got between doing these live streams, Facebook, Twitter, the stuff that's on Patreon, which you don't see on all the other platforms, including my websites, and also live streams. And I'm planning for those of you on Patreon who are watching right now, planning on doing a Patreon members only live stream tonight at about 10:30, so we can get the new GFS. We could start looking ahead to the next weather system. So give it a try. I'll put the link up on the chat. Speaking of the chat, let me just remind you, I'm going to do the same thing I did last night, and probably going to try to do this going forward, especially when weather is active. When the live stream is over, the chat board remains open for a while. So I will be around to participate in the chat and in the conversation. So bear that in mind. And if you've got any questions or comments for me directly, because I try to scroll through the chat while we're on there, but I'm not always successful at it. So at least afterwards, when I'm not doing the weather stuff, I've got my mind and my hands free to concentrate on exactly what you guys are asking. And so hang around afterward, and we'll chat for a little bit. I just put the Patreon link up on the chat board. So as I said, Joe Rayo should be in here momentarily, and there he is. I hear him now coming through the door.
Hello, sir.
I let you make an entrance. You realize that? Hold on. There he is. So the YouTube audience is waiting. We're going to start with tonight's system, Joe, and then we'll move on to the Sunday one, because the Sunday system's outcome is directly connected to the outcome of this system and what it does as it moves off the coast.
No question about it. A stronger system tonight or tomorrow, if this thing intensifies a little bit more than what we're anticipating now, would probably mean that, well, it's interesting. There are 2 camps, Joe. There's the camp that contains the European and the NAM model, which kind of is shoving the storm a little closer to the coastline. And then there's the GFS, which wants to show, and also the ICON model, which wants to show a little bit more of a suppression of the storm track further to the east and south. So if that storm tonight and tomorrow morning, the one we're watching for tonight and tomorrow morning, intensifies a little bit more, that may actually help to bend the upper level winds and allow that next system to go a little bit further to the east and maybe perhaps not give us quite as much as what the European and the NAM model is suggesting.
The flat nature of the jet stream is something that I've been arguing about all week, and we've been showing it here on the live streams. The flat west to east flow that's out in the Atlantic, it's just basically an exit route, and it's not like we have some kind of V-shaped trough with a southerly flow of some kind developing along the east coast. If this storm tonight intensifies as it moves east offshore, it is going to keep that flow flat here, and it would mean for a more suppressed look.
And also, it's a fast-moving system tonight. Actually, both of them, the one tonight, the one on Sunday night, they're very progressive. This one that's coming our way tonight and into early tomorrow is a bit more compact. And what I'm thinking, Joe, is that we're probably going to see snow breaking out here around midnight or so, give or take an hour tonight. And then we will have the steadiest activity hitting us around 3, 4, 5 in the morning. That's when we'll probably be putting down the lion's share of whatever snow or precipitation we get tonight. And then just as quickly, by about 8 or 9 o'clock tomorrow, it's just a memory. Maybe there's some bad memory, but it's a memory.
And here's, the radar. Actually, when you look at this radar tonight, Joe, that's a pretty, fairly impressive area of
Isn't it amazing
precip.
how the northern edge of the precipitation line is right along the Mason-Dixon
I
line?
know, it's almost a straight line. Like a ruler is sitting on it.
It's they probably are about to run into Yosemite Sam with a sword.
Yeah.
Don't cross this line, varmint.
The structure here on the radar is pretty impressive for a system that really doesn't look like much at face value, and yet you have a fairly large area of rain and heavy rain across eastern North Carolina and Virginia, and it looks like there's even a bit of a frontal line with some thunderstorms there into central South Carolina. So this has some punch to it as it moves out, and the northern edge now that's moving into Maryland on the radars where you can see the precip type, that is mostly snow there on the northern edge. So now we're going to see it move into Pennsylvania and into New Jersey. And this, I think you'll agree with me on this point, and that in areas near the coast, Long Island in particular, and through what parts of a stretch across central New Jersey, the temperatures are in an extremely tenuous position. I mean, literally, we're talking about, I talked to Bill Goodwin earlier, and he said when he was looking at all the soundings and all the models, it comes down to half of a degree. Mm-hmm. And, half a degree is certainly within the margin of error in a model that will make the difference between an all-snow situation for some areas and a sleet situation or a sleet, rain, snow mix. So very important that we're going to be watching the observations once everything starts breaking out to see how cold it is exactly, and what the precip type is.
And the NAM model wants to actually bring a little bit of sleet into southern sections of Westchester, south of 287 during the overnight. I'm not sure how much of that is actually going to happen, because I think much of the Hudson Valley is going to be in snow, and we're talking about snow accumulation amounts by daybreak upwards to 4 inches in some spots.
Just want to jump real quickly to the west while we have the radar up. So we're starting to see this energy that is coming in to the west that is going to be the Sunday system, and that is producing big snows in the Sierra Nevadas as expected. But Joe, you look at this, the satellite loop there from the west, and back a few days ago with one of the prior storms, we had this endless tropical feed of moisture from deep in the Pacific tropics running northeast into California. There was a bit of a pause yesterday, and now, and you could see the drivers here with this upper low that is sitting to the west of the cloud mass. Just follow the comma around, and you can see the spinning of the upper low. That is pulling all this moisture into California, and of course the energy, some of that energy is getting sent eastward over the Rockies, and that's going to be our Sunday system.
Right, and this Sunday system actually is going to line up or link up with another system during Sunday night, but I think, fortunately, that is going to happen after that system passes on by our area, so we're going to be out of the line of fire as that system really begins to rev up, but still it's going to come close enough to us to provide us with another round of significant precipitation. And of course, the big question Sunday night is, what will the precipitation form be? Will it be all snow? Will it be snow and sleet? I noticed that the NAM is suggesting that during the latter part of Sunday, the boundary temperatures actually go above zero, critical.
Right.
So I'm wondering whether or not when the initial shot comes in, it might actually be more of a mixed bag.
It
as
could
opposed to
be.
just
It
snow.
really is all going to boil down to how flat the pattern is and whether this thing winds up being suppressed and a little bit further to the south. And we're not, as we said before, we're not going to really know that until we get to tomorrow afternoon when we see what this thing does after it moves out. Now here's these are the Weather Service snowfall amounts for tonight. I think they're pretty reasonable overall. If most of the models that I looked at generated between a third of an inch to as much as 3/4 of an inch of liquid. So if you average it out at about a half, and then you maybe allow for the areas that are warmer to get less and the colder areas more. This seems like a pretty fair assessment of 2 to 4.
See, I don't understand, Joe.
Slushy couple at the coast and some higher amounts inland.
As you can see, the National Weather Service snowfall forecast has 2s and 3s all the way as far north as Dutchess County and Ulster County and Sullivan County, and yet the Winter Weather Advisory cuts off when you go north of Orange County and go north of Putnam County.
Which I'm just doing now, and you can see those amounts there are less.
Now, you see that there's a winter weather advisory also for Long Island. They have amounts projected that are going to be similar to what is being projected for those three northern counties.
Right. Well, there was a couple of issues this morning because a few folks were saying, in the pockets this morning from the system last night that outperformed in a lot of areas. We're not talking a big outperformance, but it was an outperformance. If you're expecting a coating and you wind up with an inch or inch and a half, that's an outperformance. Some areas didn't, some did, and they were asking about, well, why weren't advisories put up? And the answer to that is that the criteria for the particular area was not met, and I know that Albany's criteria for advisories and winter storm warnings, they're higher than they are for the coastal areas where they're. I know sometimes can be confusing. The other issue today was folks were wondering, well, if we're going to get 2 to 4 or 3 to 5 tonight or whatever it is, why wasn't a winter weather advisory up already? And I think that was because we had the system last night, and it might have caused confusion to have an advisory out there while that first event was going on. So then, because folks, look, the sad reality is that a lot of times folks don't read this stuff. So right. They don't read the start times, they don't read the end times, and they don't look at time stamps on snow maps. And this one is actually through 1 a.m. Sunday morning. So I tried to keep out anything that they were forecasting because it's cumulative. So I tried to keep out the stuff for Sunday night. But the bottom line is that folks, when you look at a lot of this weather stuff, you really have to read the timestamps on the maps, read the advisory so you know what's going on. And by the way, in southeastern Massachusetts, and there was winter storm warnings up for this area because as the system moves out to the east, we're going to wind up maybe picking up, tapping a little bit of the intensification as it starts to move away. So it's March 1st, Joe. I said from the beginning, it waited until now to do this.
Oh, yeah, happy spring, by the way.
Yes,
meteorological spring officially has begun, and this is not the way I think a lot of people wanted to see it. Then again, the snow lovers out there who have been suffering through December, January, and February are now in their element, and they're just rubbing their hands for tonight, and they're getting ready for Sunday night as well.
And I mentioned at the beginning that at least for New York City, although there was one event, I think there was one event in the last, two events that produced, I believe, 1.5 inches. But when you think about it, if we wind up if a couple of inches falls tonight and whatever falls on Sunday and Sunday night, and you couple that with what fell in November, that the three highest snow producing systems fell outside the 3 months where you would normally expect this stuff to happen.
A bookend snowfall this year, November and March.
Right. So here's our surface low tonight. It's 1,011 low, analyzed in the northeast corner of Tennessee. You've got a bit of a snaking front out to the North Carolina coast. So there's a weak wave that's developing on that front just east of Hatteras, and you've got a high sitting south of Nova Scotia, but it's weak. So you do have a little bit of cold, what cold air there is, and it's marginal, but it's there, is trying to wedge down here, and you're getting this low that's moving up. So again, it goes to the tenuous nature of those borderline temperatures in some of the coastal areas. And that little low is going to move off the Delmarva Peninsula. Actually, the low offshore will probably just become one low, and that's the one that's going to start moving eastward. And we're going to watch what it does as far as intensification goes as it moves out late tonight and on Saturday. And then, of course, you've got all this in the west. So here's some of that energy is already starting to push eastward. So we're beginning to see the process for the Sunday system here.
Right, and I think you and I both agree that whatever comes our way on Sunday probably will begin maybe as early as 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, just as the sun is going down, or maybe it'll hold off until after dark, but I think most of Sunday will be dry. So if anybody's concerned about, let's say, heading to church on Sunday morning, or picking up their bagels Sunday in the morning, or even going somewhere to have an early dinner, you won't have to worry about any snow through a good part of the day. But as we get toward the end of the day, Sunday and into Sunday evening, that's when the fun will begin.
Right.
Again.
Helping to pin, by the way, what cold air there is this low that's halfway between Labrador and Greenland, and it's just kind of sitting there. So it basically just pins in the air mass here in the Northeast. So otherwise, if you look back out to the west, folks, temperatures across the Ohio Valley right now are in the 40s. So at least this time around, it seems that we're making use of what, for snow lovers anyway, making use of what cold air there is. And speaking of which, let's jump now. We can start with the HRRR model off the short term. I'm just going to roll it back to, this is the latest one. The next one is going to go out 36 hours. So that'll take us further along into Sunday. But here's the low tonight and the area of precip. So we are at 11 o'clock tonight. The HRRR has the precip right on our doorstep. It might be a little slow here, Joe, but it does eventually get in here. And this is when you're forecasting for the area that's got that sleet line, which on this run has shifted actually a little bit further to the south. This run, the last two runs of the HRRR have been ever that half a degree colder. Mm-hmm. And you notice it doesn't advance northward because your surface low is moving pretty much straight to the east. And that's important. It's illustrating the nature, Joe, of the jet stream off the East Coast. This very flat highway that because there's nothing out there to force it to really move in a northerly direction. So it's going to slide to the east, and by tomorrow morning, this is at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. So we'll be seeing the snow ending from west to east tomorrow morning between 7 and 10.
You can see how the thing is beginning to really wind up as it passes Cape Cod.
That's as far as it goes, by the way.
And as such, a little bit more intensification, and you're going to have, I think, a little bit more suppression with the next system.
Could be. And I think we still, by the way, have a couple of model runs to figure that out. We'll start seeing tonight, but I think really the issue is going to be settled maybe during tomorrow morning's runs or tomorrow afternoon's, the mid-cycle runs will probably settle the issue about whether the next system gets suppressed or not suppressed.
Right.
I want to bring up the total precip here on the HRRR. It generates, notice it gets lower as you go north and west into the colder air. It generates roughly about 0.3 to a half an inch of liquid for that band along and just inland of the coast. And then you get to some higher amounts and you go into the southern half of New Jersey and down into Delaware, but of course that's mostly rain. And then you've got about 0.4 being generated back through southeastern PA, and some of that is going to be, in some areas, more than just some of it is going to be in the form of snow. So it's basically about plus or minus 1/10 or 2 of a half an inch. This will do what it will do. And then it will move along. And I'll even put the snow map up since it's probably fair.
Don't get upset now with us if we tell you that you're going to get 4 inches and you get 5, or you get 3 instead of 4 or whatever. It's that kind of a thing going on.
You get what you get. Okay? And here's how the HRRR tonight sees the snow map. Normally, I'm not a big proponent of looking at snow maps, but this kind of matches up pretty well with what the model is predicting with precip, which I don't think is
This is
unreasonable.
not 10 to 1. This is
Is it? No, this is 10 to 1, Joe.
This is 10
This
to
is
1.
10 to 1.
Okay.
And I think that's fair. I mean, there are probably going to be pockets that get a bit more in terms of numbers. And I also think this is a kind of setup, by the way, that for somebody, it could wind up being a little bit of an upside surprise.
Like this morning for me.
Right. Correct.
I'm looking out the window. I went home last night saying to myself I was going to get like a sugar coating, and instead I wake up this morning, I look at it, it's like an inch and a half, and that may not sound like a whole heck of a lot, but you can't really blow that using a snow blower. Well, you could, but you really shouldn't. And so I spent a good 2 hours with the good old-fashioned shovel, my wife and I shoveling away that minor amount. It will not be minor tomorrow.
I had about a half an inch, and then after a couple hours after sunrise and temperatures just above freezing, it took care of it.
It was a surprise. I was surprised how much sun we had early today. I figured it would be more cloud cover.
You did. I was overcast all day where I was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I had a goodly amount of sun, which helped out with the shoveling during the first part of the day.
So here's the jet stream pattern from this morning across the U.S. and you can see. It's flat. It's
right.
Just pretty flat. There's colder air near the Canadian border. Some of that's been bleeding down into our neck of the woods. You've got that energy in the west that's coming eastward. And see, this has all been my argument all along. Now tonight's system, where you see that white nose down into Indiana and Kentucky, there actually is a decent little shortwave here that is supporting the system that's going through tonight.
Right.
And part of that trough extends back up through the Great Lakes. So you have this trough. It's kind of negative, a little bit of a negative tilt there. Not a lot, but it's enough to produce what we're getting. Then that pulls out, and now we get into the question of Sunday, where the flow Sunday afternoon along the East Coast is still pretty flat. And now you have your short wave with that next system swinging around. Now it starts to back a bit to some degree on the NAM as we go into tomorrow night. And this is where, again, it's key. Is this, you got this upper low that's coming down from the north. It's going to want to kind of keep things on the flat side, and that will ultimately determine whether we wind up with a low that goes out a little more offshore or a little closer to the coast.
And it's also the NAM, for example, is really moving this thing. I've been hearing a lot of,
I'll bring up the surface so we can show that.
A lot of comments about about this it'll all be over with by 7 o'clock Monday morning. Well, yes, of course it will be. But the NAM, if you follow the NAM along, this thing could be over with by 1 o'clock in the just after midnight on Sunday night.
Here's for the late afternoon NAM. You were looking at the 12Z NAM,
right?
The 18Z actually, I mean, here's your low. The surface low running across northern Mississippi, kind of straddling the border there in northern Georgia, southern Tennessee. This is at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, snow advancing in, and this run actually kept it going a bit longer because this is at 4 a.m. and it's starting to pull the low out.
Right.
But the rain-snow line on this run, it looked a little colder than the prior run and maybe a little more suppressed as that low moves away. See, here's the problem I've been having with all of this is the fact that it intensifies this thing rather strongly, and I'm just not sure if that's the case. Maybe it'll get there later on in its life cycle, but I don't know if you're going to see a low this deep when it's moving off the, out of Chesapeake Bay and then running off the New Jersey coast south of Long Island.
I don't understand also, growing up, or not growing up, the early part of, your career and my career, when we used to look at a storm that would pass, let's say, midway between the benchmark, the 40-70 benchmark, and let's say New York City,
right,
or come even closer, the so-called coast hugger events, they would start a snow and go right over to rain. Is it my imagination, or we've been seeing not a few of these types of systems, these coast huggers, come by, but it just doesn't seem to want to warm up?
It's not. Not at all. I think your observations are correct. I also was struggling earlier today. I can't remember the last time over the past number of years. I can't remember the last storm that actually went to the benchmark. We've had actually a lot of big storms that have passed. What we used to call it the box.
Right.
That area from 35 north to 70 west.
Which was invented, by the way, by one of our
Professors.
professors, Jerome Spar.
And we've seen a number of storms produce really sizable snowfalls that have been outside the box.
Right.
And
You just still love you're thinking outside the box here. That's basically.
You know, I honestly believe that over the course of time, as you know, weather data is rather sparse as you go. You know, the more years you go back, there's less and less information available. And I just, I wonder whether in the course of a person's life, do you see every possible combination of weather phenomena in terms of how the upper air sets up and how these surface lows behave. We've seen a lot of strange systems over the years, and I know some people are going to say because they're being created, that's not the case.
No,
it's not being orchestrated. We just haven't lived long enough.
What you're saying is exactly what a lot of baseball announcers say, and I'm not talking about the guys who've been in the business 5, 10, 15 years, but I mean let's say a Bob Murphy who was around for 50 years, or a Lindsey Nelson, or a By Sam. If you're down in Philadelphia, you remember By Sam. These guys, 40, 50 years, and sometimes they'd get together, maybe during a period when there was a rain delay, and they'd be chatting, and they'd inevitably say, we've been around for so long, you think that you've seen everything, but, sometimes you come to the ballpark and you see something you've never seen before.
Right.
Same thing with forecasters. If you've been in this business as long as Joe and I have been, sometimes you'll see something that you shake your head and say, I never saw that before.
Because a lot of stuff you see is generational. You see it once every, something like Sandy, something like the Boxing Day storm.
Right.
Those are things that happen every 20 or 25 years. They don't happen every year.
Right.
Now, here's the European model today, which we can't see the in between, but it's very similar to the NAM. Although I did notice that the European has been very subtly shifting southeastward with the track of the low, very, very subtly.
Right.
For the first time today on the European snow maps, it actually gave snow from this system to New York City on the order of 0.2 of an inch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but it also, for the first time, brought significant snows in just inland of the coast. It had bands of 9 to 12 across northwest New Jersey and up the Hudson Valley. So the European may not exactly be where may not have the suppression look yet, but there's still time. And I go back again to what I said earlier with respect to the action in the Atlantic with regards to the first weather system. I'm going to switch to that Atlantic view. And here's your first storm for tonight that is sitting to the east of New Jersey, south of Nantucket tomorrow morning. And then it's southeast of Nova Scotia, passes south of Newfoundland. Okay, that is the one. That is important here because that ultimately may or may not flatten the flow. Mm-hmm. If it winds up strengthening pretty rapidly, and there are some models, by the way, that begin the intensification process very close to southern and southeastern New England, mm-hmm. which is why the Canadian, for example, is showing some big snow amounts for southeastern Massachusetts. So there's a possibility that this thing could wind up strengthening a lot faster than what some of the models are indicating. This is the determining factor for tomorrow about whether it suppresses or it doesn't. That system here, and this is how it looks, in terms of the upper air. Right. And of course, next week, Joe, it looks like a cold week, pretty much all week long.
Oh God, yeah.
With the flow from Canada like
15 or 20 degrees below normal. The normal high at White Plains now is up to about 44, 45 degrees now that we're into early March. So if you start getting, that's what's on our forecast plate for Tuesday through Friday of next week. We're talking about temperatures in the low to mid 30s. And that's okay if it's the middle part of January, but it's now early March, and we should be a lot warmer. So,
by the way, I pulled up the GFS upper air for Sunday evening, and you can see that the GFS, which has this system fairly suppressed, the flow along the East Coast is, it's not westerly, but it's not that far. It's about 250, 260 degrees. Right. So it's kind of this sort of gentle bend, but it's not enough to bring it up to bring that low close to the coast, and it's like a ruler out there. And I think the argument that it'll go out further east is a feasible one if that first storm gets going.
Now, the first storm on your screen right now is the one that's just south and east
Of Newfoundland. Yes.
And if it were just a tad slower and a tad more intense, those lines, those wave lines are going to be a little bit more bent, and could send the next system again more to the east as opposed to northeast.
Tomorrow afternoon, that's where the verdict is, and that's why it's pointless to just kind of change forecasts every 5 minutes on model runs. I had my idea, which I showed last night, which I actually I did it a day early with regards to snowfall. I was going for the more suppressed look, and I also believe, Joe, that it's going to be.
The Icon doesn't have an intermediate run, do they? Or
yeah, they do.
They do?
The Icon, there's only a limited amount of maps available on the Icon. And by the way, the Icon does not show sleet and freezing rain.
Right.
So here's the Icon's view of this. I'll bring up the GFS. So here's tonight's system. You can probably bet. Oh, I have the GFS up. All right, let's do the GFS first, and then we'll switch to the Icon. So there's the GFS tonight as that low moves out. And here's the late afternoon run of the GFS. It still has kind of a suppressed look with that low, and it's not quite as deep as the European. So this has mostly a snow event for our neck of the woods,
right.
And then it moves away to the northeast. Tell me if you agree with me. If we're going to wind up with a more suppressed look, it's going to also mean that the snow amounts are going to be lower.
Well, it would have to be, because
absolutely.
Unless you now if you start getting into banding, there may be some mesoscale banding taking place.
Not if this winds up being a flatter wave.
Yeah.
There's not going to be much banding. It's going to be more looking like tonight's
and
area.
Also the speed.
This mass.
It's a very progressive system.
Right. Okay, so that's the GFS's track.
What you're telling me is you're ignoring the RPM model, which says that
right, they
parts
gave
of
30
Northern Jersey
inches.
And parts of the Hudson Valley are going to get 24 to 30 inches of snow.
I wonder if the Canadian model has input into that. And there's a reason why I said that, because I'll show it in a second. But here's the Icon model, which has been flat all along. Again, remember, it doesn't show sleet and freezing rain here. So for tonight, it has rain over Long Island and most of New Jersey, but that's probably either snow or it's sleet in there. So that goes out, and the Icon actually starts to wrap that low up as it moves east of Nova Scotia. But here's the look for the second one. I mean, it doesn't really get it that deep and keeps the surface low pretty far to the south.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we're going to look to see if the European and the NAM maybe will give us a clue tonight. We also, by the way, can look at the 3-kilometer NAM. And the 3-kilometer NAM loves to do dark blue snows. That's why I like to bring it up. But it does this, here's the first system for tonight. And the 3-kilometer NAM actually intensifies this faster. This would be one of the models that hits, southeastern New England with some heavy snows during the day on tomorrow I'm sorry, let me start that again. Hits southeastern New England with heavy snows. And then here comes the next one for Sunday, and again, look where the low is here in southern South Carolina. At least one low's plot there, and you have your low center east of New Jersey. It's not really all that deep, but it's got all this dark blue heavy snow over northern New Jersey and southern New England. I don't know. Again, we got two major runs and one in between run to go through before I think we could settle this question.
This is kind of like what we saw this week on Jeopardy. If you're a Jeopardy fan, they've had the All-Star game this week. We had Team Buzzy and Team this and Team that. So with this particular storm coming up on Sunday night, you've got Team European, you've got Team GFS. It all depends upon what camp or what team or what set of models you believe in. And you're either going for an inland coast hugger, or you're going for a bit of suppression. I don't know which is going to be the case. And as you just mentioned, Joe, we probably won't have a good handle on this until tomorrow,
right.
after this system tonight goes on by, and we'll see what that does and how it affects the system coming up for Sunday night.
Okay, real quick on the long range, because we entered this period now. Obviously, this is a colder environment, a colder pattern, and I think my initial thoughts were a 10-day to 2-week window before the pattern starts to break down and the Pacific jet begins to take over, and I believe that that's where we're going to be once we get to the middle of the month. Once this trough finally pulls out, we're going to go into a warmer pattern toward the middle and latter part of the month. The only thing I will say, Joe, is I think there's room with energy that's running around that we might have, whatever happens tonight and whatever happens on Sunday and Sunday night into early Monday, that there might be an opportunity for perhaps one more system after that. Maybe late next week or next weekend.
I've been hearing rumors about late next week or next weekend.
So I don't even want to look at that.
I don't even want to look at it either.
Okay, but let's all look at the Canadian.
Let me point out one thing. I was here last Sunday for the windstorm, and of course I did the 7-day forecast, which is part of the routine here. And if you had asked me last Sunday what we would be expecting for this weekend, I would have said, milder on Saturday with a chance of rain, and Sunday we may have another gusty, strong wind to consider or deal with, because that was based upon back a week ago. They had a storm running through the Great Lakes, a very intense storm, passing to our north, pulling up the warm air, bringing us some rainy weather, and then behind it for Sunday, gusty, strong winds. If you had told me on Sunday that we were going to have not one, not two, but 3 separate systems, each one giving us a shot of snow,
yep, you would have said
I would have
no.
said, what the heck are you talking about? And here we are.
Well,
which shows you the credence sometimes of a forecast that goes beyond 2 or 3 days.
I brought up the Canadians' 240-hour. This is a 10-day cumulative snow totals that this model generated. And this is why you don't use snow maps, folks, okay? You don't use snow maps in the long range. You want to use them when you're inside 24, 36 hours. Maybe push the envelope a little bit to 48. Okay, I can live with that. But, I mean, if any bets on whether 44 inches of snow will accumulate in the next 10 days at Bridgeport?
When you told me this was the snow map from the Canadian model, when I looked at that, I said to myself, what did they convert to centimeters?
Yes.
24 centimeters, maybe.
Well, the reason why it does this is because, as we said, if there's an opportunity for one more thing to happen, well, there's your one more thing. A wrapped-up gale with big snows for next weekend on the Canadian model.
Right.
Lovely fantasy, folks. It has to get there first. And you know what? It would go against everything we've seen this winter with regards to how weather systems have played out.
Right, but we're into March now, Joe.
Of course.
And as I said yesterday, March is the month which you're sometimes you're very happy when it arrives, but in some years, and a case in point is last year, you're so happy when it finally leaves.
All right, so let's check out the folks on the chat board tonight and let's see if we got any questions. Benjamin Krzyzewski, apologize if I got that wrong. Maybe I got it close. Let me know. He says snow forecast can be incorrect a lot. You can address that.
I'll just
because mine are never incorrect. No,
I've said this many times before, and I'll say it again. Richard Romer, who was at City College where I went to school, and he once told me, he said, trying to forecast snow in the northeastern part of the United States sometimes is like playing pool with egg-shaped balls. And this is a classic example. Maybe not necessarily tonight. Although, yeah, tonight too. Because 2 days ago, where was this? Were we actually thinking that we were going to have 2 to 3 or 2 to 4 inches of snow tonight into tomorrow morning? No, everything is changing too quickly here.
Dave Michael wants to know exactly how much snow is going to fall in Essex County.
Exactly.
Precisely. A complete flake count. Exact number of flakes within. I'll give you a good margin to work with. 10.
42,342,562,113.
For that area in New Jersey, I have an expanding area of 2 to maybe 4. We'll have to keep an eye on what the temps do in the next couple of hours. But that's what I'm going for. We'll see if there's any upside. Going to watch the radar too. If it remains impressive in terms of its presentation, we might have to nudge the amounts up a little higher. But this is going to be, as I told everybody on some of the posts I did, this is basically we're going to just forecast on the fly tonight, watching the observations, watching how the precip sets up with respect to all the temperature profile that exists. And from there, if we got to nudge amounts higher or lower, we'll be in a much better position to do it.
When you're this close, it's more nowcasting than forecasting. It's I know people, kids who come right out of college, and literally the storm is knocking at their front door, and they're still looking at the model guidance, and they're not looking at the radar. They're not looking at surface observations. I can tell you that for many of the storms in the 80s. I used to work at a private weather office, and what we did routinely is we sat down, and remember the good old days, Joe, with the teletype, Circuit A or whatever like that. We'd get a whole list of stuff, sit down, and we'd start plotting what was happening to see where the heaviest snow was. Now, kids don't even do that anymore. They just automatically just look at the wind.
I know. They don't have the hand plotting that we did really gives us a good sense of actually getting our hands dirty, essentially, with the weather. And
there was nothing more exciting during an impending big storm.
Was to plot a sectional.
But see at the end of the remarks, pressure falling
rapidly. Oh, yeah. I was thinking about that today, in fact, is to take a look at exactly that, especially when we get to Sunday. That's going to be pretty important.
904, the 904 group with the old category of snow amounts.
The snow inks. Johnny Quest, let me just address what you're saying about the opera. Yes, the fat lady was on stage. She was clearing her throat, and she was just apparently about to get her cue when all of a sudden the lights went out. So she hasn't sung yet. She's still on the stage. That they got to fix the lights.
Yeah.
Okay. I said a couple of weeks ago. It's amazing. How humbling forecasting and weather can be. And we were looking at the overall pattern as we were moving toward the end of February, and it was hard to make a case for much to happen, considering how everything was planning out. So I was using the whole line about the fact that the opera isn't over until the fat lady sings, but that she was on stage, she cleared her throat. She's waiting for her cue for her aria to begin, and apparently now, like as I said, she's taken a pause given given how the pattern has evolved.
Oh, she just swallowed a box of sucrets or something.
Well, that's true. Yes. I'm just running back to Earl Warren is dreaming back of the blizzard of '88 as one of the most severe ever recorded blizzards in the history of the U.S. Neither of us were there for that, just so we're clear.
No, but there are a couple of very, very good books. I don't know off the top of my head the authors, but you probably could find them on Amazon.com, used editions or whatever. And I on the 100th anniversary of the 1888 blizzard, I picked up a few of these books, and they're kind of interesting. In fact, did you know, Joe, that during that blizzard, I think it was the anemometer at Battery Park that went out of commission or whatever like that, and they actually sent one of the meteorologists up on the roof or whatever to climb. It was like
did he wind up coming back?
No, yeah, he came back or whatever like that. But can you imagine doing that because of the weather observations? I guess were thought to be so critical that they needed those observations.
Yeah, with me facing that prospect, I would have said, "Nah, I ain't doing that."
I think actually the anemometer, the wind observations at Belvedere Tower are out, and they said that they sent they sent for parts. They're waiting for the parts to come so they can fix it. So if any wind, unless they fixed it already, I think any wind observations have been coming from JFK or LaGuardia, not necessarily.
Adam T. This is a perfect example, by the way, of how people's memories get skewed over time.
Right.
Adam T. I'm assuming that you are watching from the New York City, Long Island, Northern New Jersey, Hudson Valley area, and he says, how come we don't get snow like back in the 80s and 90s anymore? Big snows.
Excuse me?
There
were big snows back in the 80s and 90s?
Those were the three least snowiest decades in New York City weather records, folks. And I did the research. The three least snowiest decades, okay?
The only thing that came out of the 80s was the blizzard on April the 6th of all days.
Right, the 83 storm.
And the 83 storm.
That was it.
They call it the megalopolitan storm that was 1 to 2 feet from Washington up to Boston.
Right, and in the '90s you had the '96 blizzard.
Yeah.
You had a decent snowfall up to a foot with the 1993 superstorm, and that was it.
Right.
Okay, there have been years between 2000 and this winter included, but in that stretch from 2000 to 2019, we've had years where we've had 3 1-foot plus snowstorms, and we've had more 20-inch snowstorms in the last 19 years than in the prior 100 years combined.
Absolutely.
So, but it's amazing, because I get this a lot when I do my library talks, and I always ask this question to folks about the fact that, do you think it snowed more back 20, 30, 40 years ago than it snows now? And inevitably everybody says, yes, it did. And when I tell them that the stat is that they're absolutely wrong, that the stats are exactly the opposite, they after initial disbelief,
they're incredulous.
Right. After an initial disbelief, they think about it and they're like, you're right.
Yeah.
And so I think there's something about snow that in general for most people jars good memories, fun memories when you're a kid and you're out playing in it.
Yeah.
School days. You get a snow day out of it, and when you're an adult, you don't want to deal with it. And I just totally understand. Totally understand that concept.
I was a big lover of winter storms and snow back in the day, and my mother provided the curse. She said back in those days when I was a teenager, or even when I was in 20, she says, I hope that when you get to be my age, you feel the same way about this as I do right now. I don't like it a bit. Well, Mom, you were absolutely right. I do not. I just wish we could sweep right into spring now. I could do without what we're going to see tonight, and especially so on Sunday.
Joseph Nurek, this year's snow total accumulation across North America is way above average. You are absolutely correct. Because the entire world does not rotate around the line that exists from Portland, Maine to Boston to New York City to about or just north of Philadelphia. Okay, there's a snow hole. That area and about 75 miles to the north and west of there it has gotten very little snow. Everybody around that area, and of course you go across the Midwest. You go across the Ohio Valley, you head through the central and northern plains, and in the west in particular, it's been an absolute bonanza winter in terms of snow. It's just that it happened this year, and every year there's a snow hole somewhere. Wherever you look, if you look in the east, you look out west, you look in the middle part of the country, there's always a snow hole somewhere for one reason or another, and this year it's set up where it's set up. That happens sometimes.
Right.
There's nothing, it happens for perfectly reasonable climatological and meteorological reasons.
Right.
It just because stuff happens.
That's the way it goes.
That is correct. Is Vermont going to get any snow on Monday from Bobby Woodruff? I didn't really look that close in terms of its impact up in northern New England, but I think if the low's going to take a track pretty much to the northeast like this one is, I would imagine that there's going to be some snow. I just couldn't answer that specifically, and I don't want to just openly speculate without looking at some of the models. But you know what? If you go to just go to the Weather Service site, the Northern New England Weather Service offices, I think, do an exceptional job when it comes to getting out snow forecasts and snow information, and in particular Maine.
Right.
The Weather Service website for Gray, Maine.
Gray, Maine.
It's loaded with stuff there.
Right.
And by the way, I have a regular on my Facebook page messaged me today. He lives up near Caribou. They've had their snowiest winter on record, and they've already broken that record.
Wow.
They broke their February record for all-time snowfall. It's just been insane how much snow they've had up in northern Maine this year.
Incredible.
All right, I think we're going to wrap it up. It's coming up on...
Yeah, we got to get ready for our Facebook show and take a look at the new NAM, which I'm getting all excited about already.
Right, so we'll live stream the new NAM and the new HRRR on our Facebook show, on my Facebook page, meteorologist Joe Chaffee, at 9:25 Eastern Time. So if you want to join us there, you certainly are more than welcome to join us. My Patreon members I will do a live.
I'm gonna go, Joe. I
You
gotta
go.
do something.
All right, I'm going to just wrap it up with everybody. Going to leave the chat board open here, so I'll be participating in this after we stop the live stream in just a minute or two. But for my Patreon members, I will be doing a live stream tonight, probably around 10:30 or so that we could take a look at the new GFS and maybe go over the NAM just a little bit. Not a long one. I'm going to keep it relatively short. But we'll take a look at that new model run. Maybe we can gain some clues about what's going on, not just for tonight, but for Sunday and Sunday night. And if you're interested, my Patreon platform, it's $2 a month, and it's a great way to extend your weather coverage. If you're a weather enthusiast, I think you'll really enjoy it. I do a lot of extra stuff there that I don't do anywhere else. Plus, you can message me at any time. And it's just $2 a month. And for those of you who would like to support my channel, you can do it one very easy way that doesn't cost you a dime. You can use my Amazon link to do your Amazon shopping on. And you don't have to buy what's on there. Just use the search bar and have at it. And Amazon throws me back a little bit of coin for a few cigars, and I'm a happy camper. So we're a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates Program, and an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for us to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and its affiliated sites. And one more thing, if you have not done so already, or if you are new to the channel, be sure you hit the subscribe button on my YouTube channel, which is absolutely free. And this way you can participate in the chat, and you'll get notifications when we do live streams. Those that are on my weather app can actually watch the live streams on the weather app. And I put the link up there so you can access that and download it to your mobile device. It works for all mobile devices. So go ahead and download. It's absolutely free, and the link is up there. Okay, so wrapping this up for tonight, I will be live streaming over the weekend, tomorrow and on Sunday. Barring any last-minute complications in my own life, and we'll talk to you then. In the meantime, hope to see you later tonight, my Patreon members, and also on the Joe and Joe Show on Facebook at 9:25. Which, by the way, I will also upload to YouTube later on, probably tomorrow morning. Have a great day, everybody, and thanks for being here tonight. Have a good